Hello, welcome to Nezzo's Bad Shop. I'm your host, Nezzo. I mean, you could have guessed that. But yes, I'm your host. Welcome. Today, wherever you are, whatever time it is, whatever time zone you're in, if it's light out, it's dark out, out my window, it's dark out. Yes, you are here because you clicked on a thing that said something about the MRX GT and the RMX 2.5 RS and something about a comparison. And and yes, here they are for a side-by-side comparison. This is the MST MRX GT, the new generation, release in 2022. Yes, for the next gen of rear-wheel drive drift. And beside it is its, I guess we call it sister car. It's part of the family. It's the RMX 2.5 RS. This particular one, the 2.5 RS, has more fancy bits on it, but this is, to me, the best of the trying to say last generation and another word all at once. That didn't work. This is the I don't know. This is the best of previous. That was the word. This is the best of the last generation. The previous chassis, the RMX 2.0, the 3.0, and all those wonderful things. So this is the last of the best of the last gen, and this is the new gen. So I'm going to compare them side by side just so you can see the differences. If you're thinking about buying either of these cars, I can tell you from both of the building processes and the shakedowns out of the box. So building them to the box kit manual specifications and drifting them out of the box, both of them drift really nice. This car is nice to drive, nice to drift, friendly, can attack a bit. Like it's great. I love it. The MRX GT, the new boy, it's even better than this. It's damn good. Like, I mean, really good. Even some of my friends who have tried this already at the track, they are comparing it performance-wise out of box to their $3,000 competition cars, like the super sweaty conversion things. They are literally comparing it to that, and they are baffled at how good this is out of the box in comparison. So it's definitely next gen, and yeah. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with the front ends of each car, and then we'll mosey on over to the rear ends of each car, and then I'll give you kind of an overall. So, because then we'll deal with the chassis plates and those other things. So, yeah, you'll notice similarities here and there. You may have read about similarities. Yeah, so I'll start with the front ends. Here we go. First things you'll notice is the front ends look pretty similar, actually, right? Very similar in that sense. The front bulkhead, the shock towers, you know, the front lower arms, the upper arms, those pieces are all the same, I can tell you that. Front shock tower is the same on both cars. The upper arms, the lower arms, the front ball cups, and the pins and the turnbuckles, those are all the same. The front knuckles are the same. The only differences here is this one is using the plastic brake disc and scale caliper setup for that car. This car, the MRX GT, came with optional aluminum wheel hubs for it, so I went with that. They also give you these if you want the scale look, but for the plastic scale, like those are plastic, you can get aluminums, but the aluminum wheel hub, I went with that for the front end. So in this setup it's different, and in the manual they do recommend go with that first because it does work a little better. The parts that are also the same is the suspension mount, aka the toe block. That is an MST -2, so it's the same on both the front and the rear front of the front steering assembly here. And you will notice that we'll get into differences here now, because those are pretty much all the same pieces. Differences, the other same pieces is the steering rack. See the steering rack in there? Same steering rack and belt crank assembly. Tried, tested, and true. That's gravy. So they know that works, so they brought it over to the next generation, but I'm pretty sure there'll be some option parts and some different tuning soon. But I say this is also next gen because there are a couple subtle differences. We have different front bumpers, wider bumper, okay? There's differences there. The body posts are the same. The geometry does remain the same if you use the inner holes here. That is the same, because I had the MST Lamborghini body for the video, and I was able to drop it on both cars, but the high motor in the rear negated it on this car unless I moved it to the bottom. So other than that, yeah, no, so that's different. Other than the body posts are the same. The shocks are the same. I forgot to mention that. The MST TDA damper, those are the same, and these are the ones that have the adjustable top hat, 3mm adjustable length difference. So yes, both cars have those and both work great. This car had a preload setting of 6mm that told me to apply it. This one didn't, so I went with 2mm. That ended up working well. Yeah, so continue on with the differences. The positioning of the upper arms, you can see it here with my trusty hex here. See the screw where the screw holder is to hold the pin in, and see the pin location here. Now look at the pin location here. It's different. The screws hold is different, the holder position, and the pin location is different. So different upper arm mounting for different front geometry. Even though we both get very nice steering geometry out of the box. That's the RMX, and this is the MRX. Pretty similar, pretty close, but it's just a subtle difference on articulation. I believe there's less bump steer, kind of teeny less bump steer on the MRX versus this RMX, but even still they both drive amazing. So that's that. Now the other major difference up front is the back side of the bulkhead. So here on the RMX you see this plastic piece that mounts to the upper deck here and goes down to the chassis. Well, on the MRX we have a different piece. We have a carbon brace here, carbon brace with aluminum posts right here where the servo kind of sits between. So that's pretty nice. That's different. You can see that on that side too, and on the top. See, there's this carbon piece here, whereas the RMX has this plastic piece that flows down to the chassis. So we have a different rigidity position because the chassis plates are different, but I'll get to that towards the end of the comparison where I'll flip them both on the body post and we'll look at the underneath. So yeah, other than that, in the front end, there are no other major changes, but those few pieces that I did mention, those few little things, those do make a big difference on the MRX. So, other than that, the servo positioning is very similar, center of the chassis, and the servo saver that's also used here, you can see it there. Actually, there's a better thing. See that servo saver? That's a newish design. I say newish because it resembles the old one, but it's new. And so far it's worked pretty good. I haven't seen any strangeness so far, but I may change to a horn just to see if there was any kind of subtle wobble in there or not. It's working okay so far, but I'm wondering if it'll start wearing quickly and I'll get excessive wheel wobble, so we'll see. Other than that, the servo positioning is similar. This one is the furthest back it can go, I believe, as per, I think, the default set. Oh no, sorry, this is the increased rear bias setting. So the servo's further back. I could mount it this way across the chassis if I want, but in the manual said do it like this on the RMX RS, sorry. So that's that. Now on this car, I can also move the servo all the way back to the battery mount area if I take the ESC and move it to the rear of the car in what they call aggressive mode on the rear of the car, which is sold separately. So that's a bit of a bummer, but I'll explain how that works in a few minutes. So I can relocate the servo if I want, and yeah, that's pretty much the same on the front end of the car. The other subtle difference is the upper decks. The upper decks are also a little bit different. Similar design, double tiered, but the RMX RS are a little thicker in terms of width than the MRX. They're a little slimmer, and the MRX also has more cut away from it than the RMX, I believe. Actually, well, it's about the same. These are a little shorter because those end there where that motor is, but these continue slightly into the rear bulkhead of the RMX. So there's that. Now, if we get into the rear of the cars, you will notice the motors, particularly the first thing here you'll notice. RMX 2.5 RS has the motor high up and mounted sideways in the car, and that's per the tradition of the last several years of how we've seen gearboxes in drift cars, where the gears are also mounted sideways down to the diff, and the YD2 was the first one to kind of do that in a very nice, successful form. There were cars before that did that pretty good, but the RMX 2.0, when it debuted, had bevel gears instead of straight cut gears, and the bevel gears blew up and were weak and they just didn't go well. So eventually MST had a rethink and they changed to more straight cut gears, and this car features the straight cut gearbox, which it works really well, and it's actually interchangeable between 4-gear, 3-gear, which it wasn't before, so that was a nice thing. So that car has that upgraded transmission with those type of gears, and yeah, the motor is mounted high up, and they want it high up as per default. In the MRX, you'll notice the motor is also high up, but it is mounted in line with the chassis, not sideways. So it's mounted in line, and that's because the transmission is a whole different redesign, which has quick change features for both the differential and the final drive ratio, the final drive gears. So that's also a big thing, and we'll get into that. And that's the style of a lot of like FD/D1 real life drift cars, where you can quickly change the ratio of your final drive by changing 2 gears really fast. So you can do that on this car. The other things you'll notice in the middle to the rear of this car is the battery placement. The MRX places it further back, just a little bit further back than the RMX here. You can see it there. The RMX 2.5 RS came with a really nice carbon battery holder. Little screw there and pop open. Shorty style, yeah, you need a shorty style, but you can run shorty slim or shorty tall, and they give you options on mounting, but you must run a shorty. So that's nice. And that's on the RMX. Now, on the MRX, they didn't give you carbon, because they do give you aluminum carbon throughout the chassis, but I'm surprised they didn't, but that's okay. These little plastic holders work fine, and you have to run a shorty, but you can run a slim shorty or a regular 2S size shorty, and that's fine. It just flips the little levers over here either side, and away you go. Battery sits in there. It's good. And yeah, both batteries mount sideways in the car. I don't think you can change that. Can't remember. Yeah, it's not this car. I don't believe you can change those mounting of the batteries, but either way, they work so good right now, I wouldn't personally. So I'm going to leave those the way they are. I'm not going to change that. The other major thing you'll notice in the rear end is the rear ends are the same. The rear suspension arms, I mean. That's a rear active toe. That's a rear active toe. So that's pretty cool. So both a lot of MST chassis, drift ones, were coming out with the rear active toe because it was a nice one. It's a nice feature having that extra adjustability, but they found that, yeah, it was really effective to have out of the box. So it was a good idea. So rear active toe out of the box is kind of nice. You don't get that with most other drift chassis, to be honest, including the higher end stuff. It's mostly always sold separately. So that's a nice little touch. And both of these cars are set the same, so when the suspension compresses, the toe effect is inward for toe in, aka slip. So there's the MRX towing in, so you get a little bit extra slip when you send it. And same with the RMX 2.5, toe in on suspension compression and creates the slip. But it still works pretty good. So basically you can drive it casually, and you will get extra slip once you get up to the higher angle if you start gassing the car up. But these cars do remain pretty planted out of the box, so you do have a good amount of confidence right away to gas the car up and punch the throttle up and all that kind of stuff. You just have to be you have to remember that when you initially whip the car into a drift, if you whip it heavy, you'll get a kind of doubleized effect, because it'll give you double the slip. And a couple of guys found that out pretty quickly when they were doing 360s. They didn't plan to, but the cars are so balanced, they actually pulled right out of the 360s pretty good, or the guys were able to recover it and not crash at least. So yes, both cars they were very impressed by, but the MRX a lot of people were super impressed by. So yeah, they both have the rear active toe out of the box, and that is a nice little touch. Now I'm gonna go flip the cars around here so we can examine the rear end a little bit more deeply. Here we go now, and you will notice that the rear shock towers are different. There's the RMX shock tower. Okay, body post geometry still the same on the MRX, but the tower has been put on a diet. It still extends out for the body post geometry, but you can tell it is slimmer in width, and there's less hole options in comparison. But that's okay. That means they've optimized it. That means they've had a rethink. So that's good. The other major difference in the rear end, aside from the transmission types, as you can see here, one is in inline gear and straight to the diff, 4 gears, whereas this one has how many? 8 total gears, if I count them all, 8. So yeah, there's double the amount of gears, but this has 2 types of quick change option. This does not. You have to pull the whole thing apart. The major difference beside that is the differential in this car is a ball bit differential. So super smooth adjustment, adjust by a screw inside the cup there on a thrust bearing, and you set the amount of tension through that thrust bearing and spring, and that sets the amount of pressure on the plates to the balls, and we get the limited slip effect. Very precise, but you also have to maintain it quite a lot and check the tightness, because it will back itself off over time. Now, on this car, the MRX, whole new, let's say whole new concept, but design for their drift car. Whole new chassis design. It's completely aluminum. I love that. A little bit of dust from all the testing, but that did nothing. It looks amazing, and it's all aluminum, so it's a solid piece. Helps the rear bias weight effect. And that stuff. So if I count all the gears, excluding the pinion, which was not included in this car, I believe also it was not included, because that is I think I stole that from a D5. Shh. But yeah, that I believe both cars, they didn't include a pinion. So let me just look on the box real quick, because it said something about it somewhere. Did they? Maybe they didn't. I just did. Blah, blah, blah. No. And you will need to no. Saved by my crotch. Anyways, let's not do that. That's a funny outtake for y'all. Yeah, always have your crotch ready to catch things, because you never know what will happen. Yes, where was I? Rear end. So yes, pinions, neither of them come with pinion gears, so you will have to select that, but you get a lot of sweat around the chassis, so it's okay, fine. We'll order a pinion. They're not that expensive, and if you cry about the price of a pinion, maybe this hobby isn't for you. So anyways, you do have wide range, especially on the MRX. You have, I believe, from 18 tooth to like 38 you can put here. It's super wide, but that's because you can change the rear end and stuff here. And yes, I was saying as well, this has a ball differential. We covered that. And the MRX comes with a gear differential, metal outdrive. See the metal outdrive there? This is plastic, but that's metal outdrive, and this is a gear differential with 4 plastic gears inside with 1,000 weight oil. So in comparison, I'll just give you 2 comparisons, one on the Sakura D5 and one on the YD2. The YD2, as standard for 7+ years, 6+ years at least, the differential had been a 4-gear differential, or gear-based differential, I should say. Gear-based differential, plastic gears, and metal outdrives, but had 10,000 weight oil inside. The Sakura D5 was an all-plastic diff with metal gears inside of it, and it had 5,000 weight oil inside of it. So slightly similar effect, different gears, different oil, but a similar effect achieved. The diff in here, gear-based plastic with metal outdrives, and it has 1,000 weight oil, so it's a lighter effect, but it works really good. So I'm wondering, do some tuning on the YD2s. But the YD2s were good as they are too, so yeah, I have to do some big driving comparisons with the boys for y'all and me. But diff aside, the diff is really great and it works pretty good. The quick change rear end right here, this is also kind of new designish for MST. So you can take the 2 gears right here, take this cover off, pull 2 gears off, change 2 gears, and change the final drive ratio. So you can either increase or decrease your wheel speed depending on the gears chosen here. The car comes with 2 sets, so you install one and then you have a spare. And I have the chart. It's in the box that will explain the rear drivetrain, and I should get it out actually, because it will explain the drivetrain better. Watch my magic now. Oh yes, I should have had it out and about right away. There it is. Now let me see if I can do this correctly. Don't. Yes. Oh, that's so good when that happens. All right, let's put this back. Excuse me. Pardon me. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Excellent. Right on. Okay, so this will help me explain the rear end, because they do give you this nice chart. Like I said, the pinion selection, 18 tooth to a 38. Damn, I was right. But this tells you all about the gears and the 2 different the differential gears and all that stuff. The tail gears, that's the gears behind that cover. The tail gear ratios and what there's tail gear teeth, sorry, and the ratios for that. And actually, and even if you run a thin shorty battery or the general. Good, right? Now this is the part I wanted to show you, because this explains this whole gearbox and some of the gears that you can't see there. This is the gearbox in how it works. So from the motor output shaft pinion gear to the 48 tooth spur gear to then the Bear B. They spelled that wrong. Bear, that's supposed to be gear, but it's Bear B 28 tooth gear there. Then to gear A 30 tooth. Okay, so reduction, we go to this shaft underneath the differential, might I add, from gear A on this shaft to the tail gear B, okay, which you can choose. There's two options. What was it over here? We have tail gear 36 and 21 or 38 and 19. So from tail gear B up to tail gear A to small bevel bear to small bevel gear to the big bevel bear bevel gear. Yeah, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, well 8. Okay, 8 total, right? I was right. I was right if you count the pinion. I said if you don't count the pinion earlier, but total of 8 gears including the pinion. That's the rear drivetrain in this car. And when I first saw it, I thought that's just excessive and a waste of revs, but it actually works really good. And the sounds of the reduction area gives hallmarks to the classic FXX car, which that gave me some good feels, good memories. And not because the noise, people associate that noise with the gears failing. No, it's just the gears, just the gear lash, and just the way it sounded. It had that unique sound. And my classic FXX plastic car has a very unique sound because of that. So that was a nice kind of cool sound to hear that. But yeah, that's how that rear end works. So it's new design based on real car development and how they did Formula Drift cars and D1 drift cars for this type of quick changery. And my one friend Devin wants this transmission rear endery in his Reeve D MC1, and guess what, bud? I don't think it's gonna work. It might not fit. Yeah, I don't know. He just wants it because it's cool. Just buy the whole car. It's just buy this now. That's it. New era. But we'll probably pin this head to head with a Reeve D and some drive testery or some. We'll do a comparison or something else like that. But that's the other major thing on this car. And if you guys notice, the rear shocks are mounted upside down, whereas the front shocks on both cars are mounted right side up. MST in the manual said mount these like this for to have the oil at the bottom and give it the opposite effect to the normal shock, but it does work pretty good still. There's still kind of softish feeling. You can see the rear active toe working there, and yeah, it's soft, but it's not as soft as my my comp car, mind you, because that's like the full. That's been tuned, but this is, yeah, for out of box. This is good. This is great. It works really good, and both cars work really good. But yeah, in comparison, that's the major things across the whole car, except for, we'll flip them onto the old body post here. Now let me flip this one so we can see that. We'll flip this guy. You can see that. Now, this is the last thing to really compare, is the chassis plate. We did everything else except the chassis plate. So here you can see the classic, the best. That was my roommate. If you heard that, he's been gaming all night, which is good. If you see this here, this is the RMX 2.5 chassis plate, and you can see it's still got a bit of. It's had a diet from its original form. There's been some trimming here, and especially here and here for the arm, so we get more droop and more suspension travel, which is good, but it's still a bit not on the thick side, but a medium sort of width compared to the cars of yesteryear. And but what you'll really notice in comparison to this is the lack of cutouts, both in the middle of the car, middle of the chassis, and on the side, even in the front. There's pretty much no cutouts anywhere. So that's why I say this represents the best of the previous generation, because the previous generation wasn't huge on chassis flexibility. It was a thing, but in terms of now with the extra cutouts as we see here on the RMX, look, I can see the servo, I can see the bell crank, and good amounts of the side of the chassis has cutouts. That's all for flexibility. Even though we can make the chassis more rigid, having these cutouts does attribute to suspension performance, to weight shift, to car driftability overall. So we've noticed a lot more car kits, including even the conversion kits, have way more cutouts in the chassis. And yeah, look at the difference here. The cutout from there, the way that's cut, to how slim this is. So they've increased. You can see it, subtle increasement just by cutting that out a bit more, but this also helps for seeing things and for maintenance and stuff like that. So it's a dual purpose. It's not just for chassis flex. On the maintenance side of it, it is easier to access certain things on the chassis and stuff like that. And yeah, this is definitely a little bit slimmer. It's actually pretty close in comparison, but because of the cutouts, that does make it more flexy, which does attribute to more performance. And then once we get into the mid, we start getting slimmer than that RMX. And then up front, we're definitely as slim as up at the front, but it is just a bit slimmer, like ever so slightly, I believe. So that's that. And if you were wondering what the hole was, where is it? If I can do this. So if you're wondering what the hole was in the front of the bulkhead right here, you send a 1.5 mil down the middle, and when you do, you should have locked the steering rack in place. See that? When you lock the steering rack in place, that allows you to properly tune your all your suspension, because the steering will not move, and it will be stuck in there. And you can even do it from the bottom side, even on this car. See? So I can, on the RMX, same idea. From the bottom side, they've put a hole in there, and they've done it also on the RMX. See, there's my screwdriver protruding through. So both cars have that as well, and that's very handy. So you can lock the steering rack in place so that you can do your tuning without getting out of position where you're thinking the straightness is actually, the rack is off a few degrees. So that's a very handy thing, and that's been a thing for time for RMXs, and only on some other cars did they think of that. Some of the other chassis that came out in the last 6 or 8 years or so, some of them feature something like that, but not every one. So whenever something like that comes around and I see that, that's nice to highlight, and it's a nice little touch. Means the engineers were thinking when they designed the car. So I always like that. Good engineering pays off for so long. Bad engineering is what we got to work around and all that stuff. So, but yeah, out of the box, these cars drive great. I recommend both of them to anybody. If you get a good deal on an RMX 2.5 RS, or a last of the best gen type car, go with it for sure, and you probably will not be disappointed. You'll probably have a great time. But if you're looking for something new in a similar price point, because actually both of these chassis were, I believe, a similar price point when I acquired both of them. So just one is the best of the previous gen, and this one is the best of the new gen. I say best of the new gen. This is probably one of the best releases in 2022 for drift car. I'd like to do a whole comparison or talk through video too on that, so that could be a thing. But this is one of the best releases in 2022 for new gen drift car, RC rear wheel drive. So yeah, if you're looking for a bit of the new gen stuff, want to take a plunge and join the new era, go with the MRX. But either way, you will not be disappointed, and I could recommend both of these cars to anybody. But so far, in my personal opinion, my personal preference, if I had choice to take one of these cars home right here, right now, and make it my next main car, or next main MST car for 2023, I'm going with the MRX GT. That one. This one. And it's not because I don't like this car. I really like this car too. This drove really good. I like this car. The MRX just has that little bit more, and because it's that next generation, they really did a really good job engineering it and executing the design. So the realization that is here in front of me is so good, and I want more people to drive it out of box before I start tuning it, because I want them to experience it, and if they're thinking of a new car, help make their decision. I've been trying to do that for years for the local boys, and it really helps pay off. So sometimes you just got to drive something to decide, but otherwise, yes, that's that. And thank you for watching. If you've got a RMX 2.5 RS or an MRX GT, let me know. And yeah, MST, I don't know why some of these two things aren't considered VIP level. Like, did you do away with the VIP naming? We used to love that. This 2.5 RS, I was thinking this is almost VIP level, like pretty close with the amount of stuff that's on it. And then the MRX came out, and I thought, well, this surely should have been a VIP level, because I got a whole aluminum rear end, and I got a few extra carbon thingies and pieces I didn't expect, and just I'm surprised. Even aluminum suspension mounts. So I'm surprised it's not a VIP level. But I mean, if they did a VIP level or a KMW, oh, I'm all over that, because I still don't have a KMW RMX or FXX in my collection, my special collector's collection. So that needs to be a thing. But also, if they do an MRX GT or a KMW, MRX KMW, let's call it, if they do something like that, I'm all over it. Like numbered or whatever, like, this is a very good car. So yeah, if I had to take one home, it's this one, the MRX GT. That's the one that will come home with me. This is the one that would be my number one go-to car for 2023 as MST right now. If I had to pick between these two, this would be the one I'd run most of 2023 personally. As I'm just gonna go for a drift. Okay, I'm grabbing this one. I'm grabbing one of my personal fleet cars. It's gonna be this one. I have a feeling it's gonna be this one. I might even leave this sweaty AccuVan stuff that you see in there in this car. Might even just leave it in there because I like it all so much. But we'll see. And yes, let me know what you think. If you have either or car, if you just ordered this car, or you're wondering about this or the previous gen, or some of the other manufacturer offerings, I can recommend both cars. And personally, I do like both of them, but this is the one I would choose to become my go-to MST car in my fleet of personal vehicles. Yeah, so that's that. Yes, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and hope to chat with you soon online. And yeah, you'll see these cars again for sure. Videos, shakedowns, comparisons, tuned shakedowns. These are both out of box right now, so I may just leave these like this for a bit. People can drive them, and then I'll tune them. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you for watching, and have a great day or night. Bye now.